The Babylon Project podcast was our last best hope for reruns. It failed. But in the year of the Shadow War, it became something greater. Our last best hope for fandom. The year is 2017. The place, the Babylon Project podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hello there, Babylon 5 fans. You are listening to the Parsec-nominated Babylon Project podcast. I am your host, Raul Wybera, and with me is my good friend and constant co-host and companion and fellow Babylon 5 junkie, Jim Arrowwood. How are you doing tonight, good sir?
Doing good. Doing real good.
Oh, wow. Well, I've got my notes. I've got my Earl Grey. Hot. Actually, you know, in all honesty, if you've ever had iced Earl Grey, it sucks.
Yeah, my son warned me off of that, and I don't like iced tea anyway, so.
I don't mind like an iced, standard iced tea. Hey, I'm in St. Louis. I don't put sugar in it. I can't stand sweet tea at all.
Yeah, see, I put so much sugar and lemon in it, I might as well have lemonade.
Oh. Okay, what episode are we going to be talking about tonight?
Well, we are going to be talking about A Day in the Strife.
No
Beatles
songs
season?
Then, huh?
No Beatles songs.
No Beatles song. Okay.
Yep.
You were saying third episode?
The third episode of the third season.
And I'm tempted to use a phrase that would get us an explicit rating that starts with cluster.
Yeah.
But it is a good description of this episode.
It is kind of a hodgepodge of several different things. One of which, I don't know, it kind of makes me a little uncomfortable. There's like 4 plot lines in this show.
Mm-hmm.
That more or less intersect except for one, which doesn't really fit.
Straczynski describes this episode as a day where everything that can go wrong does go wrong, basically.
Well, I would say I would have to agree.
Yeah. In my notes, I kind of make a reference to an A story.
Yes.
And, thinking about it now after having a little time to step away from him and then see the episode and then step back into it again and look at my notes, I really can't say that. I don't think there was an A story. And that's why I made that original few minutes ago cluster reference. It was a cluster bomb.
Well, we'll get to that. I'll tell you what. Let's jump into this thing and start tearing it apart.
Yeah, your summary, I'm pretty sure, will get the idea of what we're talking about across.
It should.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
A probe from an unknown race arrives at Babylon 5, promising some amazing advances in science and medicine in exchange for the answers to some 600 questions within a certain amount of time. At the end of which, if the questions are not answered, the probe promises that it will detonate with enough power to completely obliterate the station. The reason given for this is that the people responsible for the probe are trying to eliminate races that aren't technologically advanced. Sheridan immediately sends word out to everyone to begin gathering answers to the questions including physics, quantum mechanics, molecular biology, and genetics. Everyone works feverishly to gather the answers that are required before the deadline. Just as Ivanova is about to give the order to transmit the answers, Sheridan realizes that the purpose of the probe is to actually eliminate other races that are technologically advanced enough to threaten the makers of the probe, and orders that the answers not be sent. When the appointed time arrives, the probe simply leaves the area of the station, assuming that there is no threat from the occupants therein. Sheridan is proven right as he waits long enough for the probe to get sufficiently far enough away from the station to no longer be a threat, and then orders the answers to be transmitted. As he suspected, the probe detonates. Nafar, a counselor from the Narn homeworld, arrives on the station with Delenn. Nafar informs G'Kar that he is to return to Narn to face his fate before the Centauri, since he cannot be prosecuted while on the station thanks to being granted sanctuary. Nafar further tells him that all of the Narn on the station with family on their homeworld will be persecuted until G'Kar returns. This not only serves to cause G'Kar much strife, but also splits the Narn on Babylon 5 into two camps, those that want G'Kar to leave and those who do not. As the conflict escalates, G'Kar, believing that he has no other choice, makes preparations to return to his homeworld. As he is departing, Delenn approaches him and tells him and the other Narn that G'Kar's continued resistance will do more to inspire those back home than offering himself up to be a martyr. G'Kar changes his mind and decides to stay. After a long period of time above and beyond the call of duty, Dr. Franklin has become addicted to stimulants, or stims as they are called in the vernacular. Garibaldi discovers this when Franklin, who is completely wiped out while they are out having a drink together, briefly leaves the room. And when he returns, he is wide awake and full of vigor. When Garibaldi later confronts Franklin about his addiction, Franklin rebuffs him. He explains that he is not addicted and promises that he has the situation under control. Garibaldi lets Franklin think that he believes him. Finally, Londo convinces Delenn to have Vir sent to Minbar to represent the Centauri Republic there. Vir does not want to leave, but Londo insists, wanting to shield Vir from the troubles that have arisen as a result of Londo's manipulations. Well, there it is.
You managed to untangle all four stories into their individual threads.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations. That could not have been easy.
No, it was pretty plain what was going on, for the most part. So,
like I said, good luck trying to figure out. There really isn't an A story to that.
No, not really. Well, yeah, there is actually, but I'll give my my opinions on that a little later.
All right.
Character files opened.
Well, in the meantime, who do we have in this episode?
We don't have a great deal of guest cast. We have Stephen
other than
Mock.
just a few, other than the handful of bit parts that really aren't heavy to mention.
Right. Stephen Mock as Nafar, sent to the station to replace G'Kar. This is his only appearance on Babylon 5, and other shows that he has been on in the genre include The $6 Million Man, Deep Space Nine. He played a Bajoran general in that.
Okay.
Millennium and Sliders.
I don't remember. I'm looking at his actual out of makeup face, and he does kind of look familiar.
Oh yeah.
He goes all the way back to Galaxina.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time.
Yeah. Watchers Millennium, Tarzan, Murder, She Wrote,
Yeah, and soap operas.
and soap operas. Cagney and Lacey.
Yeah. And then we have, returning to the show, Marshall Teague.
Yay.
This time as Talon. We should remember him.
Again as Talon.
Yes. We covered his other roles earlier, but just as a reminder, he was in the first season episode Infection as Nelson Drake. He was in All Alone in the Night and he was billed there as Narn, but in this episode we find out he was Talon. He'll appear in 3 more episodes credited as Talon after this one. And
that was about a dozen episodes too few.
Right. Oh, yeah. And he appeared in 1 episode of Crusade.
Mm-hmm. And we never see him on... No, we do see him in the first... In Infection, we do see him out of makeup.
Yeah.
At least at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, just normal makeup.
Right.
Very briefly.
My wife considers him a major stud.
Yeah, he's pretty cool, actually. If you look him up on Facebook, he loves to do posts on Mondays and Tuesdays especially. He has Marshall Monday and Teague Tuesday. And he's got some amusing things going on. Apparently, he's quite the chef. He has an awful lot of stuff up there with him cooking.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In the entertainment business, he's still more in the production side now, right?
I didn't even look him up because we've talked about him before.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And we'll be talking about him again.
Oh, yeah.
There's definitely more episodes.
Initiating plot analysis.
Okay. Well, you gave a summary that had everything in nice, separate little stories.
Yeah, now we got to mash it back together.
Yeah, because when you watch the episode, folks, it's a plate of spaghetti as far as the way it jumps back and forth between those stories.
Mm-hmm.
We actually start out with the shipping guild, the Space Pilots Guild, complaining to Sheridan, I guess basically a management union meeting as far as shipping delays. And that seems to be because of extra checks for weapons.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that it might be a concern about arms going to Narn, since everything seems to be revolving around the Narn resistance.
Oh, yeah.
And Earth's support or lack of with that.
Right. And I would also say that probably to anyone else, they just do not want weapons being filtered through the station.
Right.
So apparently they're taking extra precautions. Again, as you say, probably
they've had some bad experiences with that before.
Yeah, and just to keep things from going through the station to Narn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean they got one of the docking pylons blown off as a result, and almost the station hit. So.
Yep. Then we get a loudmouth speaking up.
Oh gosh, yeah. Sheridan getting grief about the government having all the guns.
Yeah, you've got the guns and we don't have any, so you guys feel like you can do anything you want.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I like Sheridan's approach in dealing with the guy.
Yeah.
Sticks the gun in the guy's pocket and takes his it looks like a loading tool or a crating tool, sort of a combination of it. Sort of looks like a type of a pick.
Yeah, it looks to me. I would have called it a pickaxe of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the record, Sheridan actually has the advantage in doing that.
Oh yeah.
That close of a distance, and he put the gun in the guy's pocket.
Yep, and said, "Okay, now you have the gun. What are you gonna do?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Guy backs down pretty quick.
Yep. Well, simple fact: if you've done anything in self-defense, I don't care if it's martial arts, I don't care if it's shooting or what, violence isn't a matter of who has the gun. It's a matter of who has the will.
Ah.
And I think that was a big point that Sheridan was trying to make, and that helped calm the hothead down a bit.
Yeah. But
Yeah, that said,
at the same time, Sheridan had an ace in the hole.
yeah, he palmed the ammo.
Yeah, he took the power cap out of the PPG before he handed it over to the guy. And I actually noticed that because those
you have to watch it the second time through to catch it.
well, those PPGs have a very distinctive shape to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy cap in the back, if it's missing, it's really obvious because it's like a third of the top part of the weapon.
Right. You've got that big cylinder sticking out the back.
Yeah, a third of the weapon was missing, so I kind of caught that right away. But I'll tell you what, I don't think I would want to play poker against Sheridan.
No. As he tells Susan, hey, he's not stupid.
No.
But he does use this as an opportunity to call for a break. And that moves us into our second story that we're going to be running through. And we meet two Narn. The one that doesn't matter, sorry, I've got my biases and I'll own up to him, is Nafar, who's there as Jakar's replacement.
Ooh.
Ooh, you got it. But
Yeah.
we also have Talon in the background. Yay!
Yeah. And it's really kind of funny how he's walking around with this weapon hanging on his back and they're actually allowing it.
Well, he's an official he's an official bodyguard for a visiting representative of the state.
Yeah. And you could see that right away because Sheridan came around his desk to talk directly to Nafar.
Mm-hmm.
And did you see Marshall? He just stepped forward. He took a step forward like, okay,
Right.
You're getting too close now. So
Mhm.
it was very well played, very well directed.
Yeah. Well, we come back from the break, and Nafar is explaining the Narn position. And when I say the Narn position, put some air quotes around that, okay?
Uh-huh.
Sheesh, it's like, what is this guy, a Centauri sympathizer?
Well, I wonder who sent him.
Yeah, good question. We'll kind of get an answer to that, but
Because the Kari has been disbanded, isn't that correct?
right, and the
Okay.
Centauri have their provisional government or the ruling Narn, so
So he must have been sent by the Centauri.
or at least vetted. But the gist of it is he wants Jakar returned to Narn,
Yeah.
and Sheridan is not going to get involved there.
No. And this Nafar smells like a collaborator to me at this point.
Oh, he smells from the moment he walks up in the meeting room with the pilots.
Yeah. Now he's a good actor.
Yeah.
All right. But in this role, I do not like him.
Then he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Why is Talon with this guy?
Well, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, story 3, we make a trip back to Earhart's, the officers' club.
Yep. Focusing on Garibaldi and Franklin together, just having a drink and visiting.
Yep. And Franklin is just totally wiped out. As you mentioned, he's just exhausted.
Yeah.
Susan joins in. They're talking about differences between the captains. It seems that Sinclair is more of the diplomat and Sheridan is more of the soldier and, in particular, a tactical genius.
Obviously, yeah.
Garibaldi was kind of snooping in Sheridan's classified files. But as he notes, we need a good soldier now more than a diplomat, and Sheridan is probably their best chance to survive whatever it is that's coming.
And in Michael we trust.
In Michael we trust. Franklin takes a short trip to the little Narn's room and comes back full of energy. So what's up there?
Yeah, he picks himself out a lady, and he's gonna go and tear the floor up. And he's either had some really good coffee or a big can of Red Bull, one or the other.
Yeah, because he's got to go back on duty in 2 hours. He got a call in. This was like his first downtime in
36 hours, I think he said.
So this is not going to be an easy night for him. So he's out dancing instead of sleeping.
Yeah.
We use Nafar to introduce our fourth story. Nafar goes and reports to Londo, who proceeds to just flat out humiliate the heck out of him.
Oh gosh, that was terrible. That made me uncomfortable.
It was hard to watch, and Veer is visibly upset by it.
Well, Londo was so condescending, talking down to this guy, treating him like a kid. I mean, it was terrible, and he just stood there and took it.
Yeah. Finally, Londo tells Veer once the guy leaves, tells him not to be fooled by appearances. That Narn is still not broken. We might think, and the Narn might think of him as a sympathizer, but Londo sure as heck doesn't. And his reasoning, the Nafar still has pride.
Yeah. Well, Nafar is one of those people who they're called a wait and seer. I wish, I cannot remember the name of the movie, but someone said the wait and seers will kick your butt every time. It's an older movie.
Yeah.
And he's a wait and seer. We'll just, we're going to go along with this for now. We'll get Jakar back because the Centauri want that. I will take over on the station. We'll bide our time. And, everybody wants action
and
right now.
And Jakar's just collateral damage.
Yeah. And, once you accept a situation like that, as time goes on, everybody begins to accept it, and then there is no resolution.
Yeah, so goes back to Londo's, you've got to break that pride.
Yeah.
I guess from a military perspective, it probably does fall to some degree into psyops.
And Londo simply says it's the way things are done.
Yeah. The other part of what he says is nothing personal. It's nothing personal. Does that phrase ring a bell?
Enlighten me.
Our last episode.
Yeah.
The bomber. It's nothing personal.
Right.
It seems a lot of evil can be justified by simply saying it's nothing personal.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I don't know.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's an excuse.
Had I been in Nafar's situation with Londo talking to me,
it would have been very personal.
I honestly don't know if I'd have been able to restrain myself. So I guess I've got to give it to Nafar for at least having, what would you call it, restraint.
And you know what? We actually have a fifth story.
Oh?
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned it yet. It was what I actually called the A story in my notes. Some sort of unknown craft or they figure out it's an unmanned probe is approaching, and apparently it is a first contact situation.
Yeah, this is the one that we keep coming back to. Unmarked, unmanned, and making some very, very strange demands.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet, but the computer is working on the translation, and apparently it's going to take 2 or 3 hours to translate. But now I guess we kind of step it backward in the other direction, because this is just really quickly introduced, and then we switch back to the story that's going on between Londo and Veer, because Londo is now talking to Delenn, and he's trying to get a personal favor out of her.
Yeah, which she looks at him like, oh, really? After all of this, now you want a favor.
Favor from me, yeah. Except it's not really a favor for him. He's wanting her to make Veer ambassador to Minbar.
Yeah, she softens up once he explains what he's wanting.
Uh-huh. And he gives her the official answer first, of course, that the office has been empty for too long and it'd be a good experience for Veer, blah, 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 blah. And she looks at him and says, okay, and now the truth.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't exactly say. He kind of puts it from the perspective of, I think he's trying to use his unpopularity to help convince her. And he's also trying to hide from what he sees himself as becoming.
Yes.
But Veer being in the way, just trying to get rid of him. But the truth is, and it's obvious in his expression, and Delenn sees it, that he's really trying to protect Veer.
Yeah. And now the interesting thing here is this is setting up a story that's going to come to fruition down the road just a piece.
Quite a bit. Yep. And speaking of stories being set up that are going to come up down the road, Mike and Stephen are having dinner.
Yep.
So it's been a while since we first saw them talking.
I don't know. Why wasn't it Banya Kauda? I can't.
That's coming up later. Or did it already happen?
That already happened.
Yeah, this is another huge pasta meal.
Yeah, now they got spaghetti, plate of sketties.
Yeah. And Mike being Mike doesn't pussyfoot around. He shoots from the hip and is asking Franklin about his using stims.
Yeah, well, actually, Mike does kind of beat around the bush a little bit.
Yeah, okay. You mean using himself as an example?
Yeah, he goes through a little bit of a setup, but Franklin catches that and says, "All right, let's get down here to business.
Right.
You tell me what you want to know."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Franklin's response is less than cordial.
Oh gosh, it's terrible.
Yeah, that kind of defensiveness, especially when he throws back the "never met a bottle you didn't like."
Yeah, that was a low blow.
Yeah,
that was a real low blow.
It's also a sure sign that there's probably some fire underneath that smoke.
Mm-hmm. Mike knows this too,
right.
And so where he could have really come back with something, he just kind of puts his arms up and says, "Oh, well, okay, there it is."
Yeah, and remember, this is something that was set up in the first season.
Yes,
so
I do remember.
Yeah, toward the end of the first season, this was set up, and we saw some hints about it in the second season. In particular, with Franklin's, we get an idea of some of the dangers of stims from Franklin's instructor that they smuggled.
Yeah, and then this is going to have some dire consequences for him.
Yeah, it's going to be a big part of Franklin's storyline over the next, good ways. So, dinner time, Sheridan's out having a drink. Happy hour, he's got a big glass of orange juice. And Delenn meets. Yeah, well, that's sort of a running. That's sort of a running. I don't want to say gag. I mean, that's a technical term, I know, but it's not gag as in a joke, but it's sort of a running gag with Sheridan and oranges.
Yes. The funny thing of it is those glasses they served it in made them almost look like Jovian sunspots.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
Yes.
But Delenn meets up with him, and they just have a nice little time catching up after the Strife escape. And apparently he's not all that thrilled about being a bodyguard for Nafar, which makes me suspect he might have been assigned.
Well, of course he was assigned. I mean...
But not from the standpoint of, they said, you will be his bodyguard, rather than, okay, who's willing to bodyguard this guy?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be any part of it.
Yeah. Except that in this case, he does point out it does give him the opportunity to catch up with Sheridan, and he pledges himself to protect Sheridan, actually, as a part of a blood debt.
Yeah, one for another.
So if I was Nafar, and it came down to brass tacks, where Sheridan and he were not having exactly an agreement, I would rather not be Nafar in the room.
Mm-mm.
So, about the probe. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the probe again.
It's a test.
Yeah. Answer a bunch of questions.
Or boom. Huh?
Answer questions or boom. That sums it up quite well. 600 questions, 23 hours to answer on all areas of science.
You know, and they took the absolute wrong approach. All they had to do is send the message back, 42. Problem solved.
Yeah, well, that would be if Zaphod were at the other end of the receiving end of that message, but I don't think that would fly.
They could have sprayed the probe with a pan-galactic gargle blaster. That'd have disabled it.
No. Now this is not the
Hitchhiker's Guide podcast. Yes, I know. I know.
But, the question in my mind is, as I'm watching this, is where is this story going? What is the point?
Sheridan thinks that the probe's task is to weed out inferior races, sort of help evolution along kind of deal.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That just doesn't make sense.
No, not necessarily.
Now, to me, it would make more sense if the probe told them, okay, if you can't answer these 600 questions adequately, you will be enslaved because you are an inferior race.
That makes a little more sense. Now,
why would a superior race waste a possible resource?
Shadows.
Yeah, but this is not the shadows. This is some unidentified, weird, out of left field kind of a thing.
And that's where your comments about where's it going and what's the point really come into play, because we never figure out where this thing is from.
See, and that brings up a question in my mind. Was this an A-plot from a rejected third season Star Trek original series script or what? Does this... honest to goodness, okay, does this not look like an episode of Star Trek? That storyline.
In some ways, yeah, you've got a legitimate point. But that said, there's a realism to this in that we don't always get the answers in life.
Yeah. Well, see, though, in Star Trek, what would have transpired between Spock, Kirk, and McCoy? That would have been what the show would be about. Okay. Yeah. Now we've got the probe, and all we're doing is taking a quiz for no reason. We don't know why or who or where they're from or anything else. This particular storyline does not fit in Babylon 5. This is a trope that just I don't know. Maybe they had the other storylines and they said, we don't have enough to bring all this together, so let's just thread this silly little tale through here about this dizzy probe.
I don't know. I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. And it fits in the idea of everything that can go wrong does go wrong. And they've had things show up like that one ship from a couple 100 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I mean, things have shown up in similar ways, but yeah, it was just nothing. It didn't have an actual connection to the main story at all.
Yeah. Well,
it was just an out of the blue. Bloop.
Yeah. And what's either it wasn't very well written, and I'm sorry, JMS, but It either wasn't well written, or maybe it wasn't very
You mean
well
if it was an abandoned script?
Yeah. Or it wasn't very well directed.
Well, I don't think it was borrowed. I don't think it was borrowed from an alternate shooting.
Yeah. It's just, the thing is so full of holes it ain't even funny.
Yeah, I know. Oh, in some ways, I have even more issues with how it actually resolves.
Oh, yeah, I know. Corny.
Though at least there is a basis behind it that we'll get to at that point, but that doesn't make it. In some ways, it doesn't make it any easier to swallow.
Yeah. It is camp that I would not expect from this show.
And that's what doesn't fit about it. You nailed it, my friend. It was the campiness of that particular trope.
Yeah. It'd make a great Star Trek story.
Yeah.
With everybody running around trying to figure all this stuff out. But it just did not work for me in this universe. So there's my rant.
It makes perfect sense to me. I would put it as less of a rant and much more of a very valid criticism. And you've got me thinking here now.
Uh-oh.
Because no, in a good way. But as far as what you had problems with this episode,
yeah.
When I was approaching it for the rewatch, I'm sitting here thinking, great, that stupid probe episode again. And then once it started, it's like, oh yeah, there's this.
Yeah, there's the other good stuff.
And there's like 4 other stories that are fantastic.
Yes.
And it kind of presents itself as, you the holes in that probe story, and I'm just going down the same path that you were already down, sort of. It's like the holes in the probe story kind of overshadow the rest of the bulk of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you've got a good point.
So, well, maybe it's time to move on.
Yep. 42. Nafar is making his case to Jakar. Gets Jakar a little riled, actually.
Yeah.
He wants Jakar to stand down the resistance and to surrender. And he makes the platitudes about how he won't be harmed. Yeah, right, sure. But then he goes a step further and threatens the families of the resistance.
Yeah. He is a spineless collaborator at this point. He is low. This guy is way down.
I don't care if he is a wait and seer, as you had called it. It's, yeah, pathetic.
It is. It really is, especially when he brings the families into it. But, that's exactly what the Centauri would do.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is so out of character for a Narn to collaborate, even from a wait-and-see perspective. It's just too out of character.
Yeah. I would imagine, like anybody else, they would have that, that faction that,
yep.
Better red than dead, or that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, let's switch back to Franklin, because he is having a meltdown. Exhaustion does that to you. I've learned that the hard way from recent experience. But Susan needs answers, or boom.
Yeah, we don't want the boom.
We don't want the boom. Now he opens his drawer. He's looking at the stem. I don't know what they call it.
I'll
not
call
so much
it a hypo.
shot, but hypo. Yeah. He's looking at the stem hypo, and he's obviously very, very tempted, but he does end up putting it away.
Yeah, he told Michael he was going to try to cut back.
Yep.
So
we just have that little interlude to let us know that the story's going on, and he's trying to get the answers for the medical questions together. In the meantime, Veer does not want to go to Minbar.
Well, of course not, because Veer cares.
But everyone wants to go to Minbar, I thought.
No, Veer cares a great deal about Londo.
Yeah, and he wants to protect him.
Yeah, and that's basically his job. And I don't know, maybe Veer doesn't feel ready to be a representative.
Well, I'm certainly you certainly get that from his personality that he just wants to be quiet, out of the way, not the center of any sort of attention.
Yeah, he is a bit buffoonish, but he's also very compassionate, very thoughtful, and intelligent. He's not dumb.
No, that buffoonery hides a lot of deep thought.
Yes.
Deep thought enough that a big part of what he does, and this is one of the concerns of Veer leaving, is in a lot of ways Veer is Londo's conscience.
Yes, absolutely. Even though Londo doesn't listen to him.
Nope.
Enough.
Yeah. Well, the Narn resistance goes after Nefar. And all I can say about this is only a fool would try to attack Talon.
Yep.
Sheesh. That's just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
But Jakar shows up. How he knew to be there, I don't know. But Jakar shows up, and rather than having them fight each other, he says he's going to go back to Narn.
Yeah. Well, they're supposed to be fighting the Centauri, not each other. And so, yeah, and he sees that as the only way to keep everything from falling apart. But if he leaves, it's going to fall apart anyway, because there's enough angry Narn on that station that Nefar is not going to last very long.
Talon or no Talon, Nefar is not going to last very long.
No.
And eventually Sheridan would have to get involved, and push comes to shove. If there's a blood debt, you know whose back Talon is going to have.
Mm-hmm. But, Jakar, without thinking, I think it was more of a knee-jerk thing, and the family thing hanging over his head. Okay, right. Fine. I'm going to go to Narn, and this should settle it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we get a short, humorous interlude here. The transport pilots are wanting to know when the next meeting is going to happen, so Sheridan sets the time for just after the deadline.
Yes.
And you've got Lieutenant Corwin just kind of sitting there in the background watching the interchange between the two.
It's priceless.
It's priceless. And just the dialogue, the way the conversation shifts from Susan and Sheridan to Susan and Corwin. Like I said, it's the most humorous moment of it's really, in some ways, the only really humorous moment of the episode. Yeah. So if you've got that, go ahead and let it run.
How are we doing on those questions?
75 more to go. We just started transferring the batch on molecular biology. Corwin, check these figures again, make sure they came to the translator okay. I don't want to get killed because of a typo. It'd be embarrassing.
On it. Can we power up the weapon system gradually so the probe won't pick it up?
We can try, but it may not matter. The probe's supposed to be fast enough to blow the instant we fire.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe they're bluffing. If we don't get those answers in time, we may have to take that chance. Power up slowly.
Captain, I've got the Transport Pilots Association on the link again. They want to know when you're going to meet with them to finish the discussion about weapons. They've called 5 times in the last hour.
How long before that probe detonates?
6 hours.
Tell them we'll reconvene in 7 hours. If that thing blows, at least it'll save me from one more annoying conversation.
Always finding the good in every situation, eh, Captain?
Absolutely. If I didn't, I might end up like you.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Did anybody else hear that? Did you hear that?
No, Commander.
Good. I swear, if we live through this, somebody's gonna find their automatic shower preferences reprogrammed for ice water.
And what you don't see is Corwin sitting behind there after that, just sort of giggling.
Yeah, he's just he's having a great time watching this little play go on.
Yeah, but that's our light moment of a break before we get back to
yeah. Maybe if
this
thing blows up, I won't have to worry about another meeting.
It's not involved bombs or explosives, but I'll be honest. I've set meetings that way. If this happens, if this goes down and this goes down, then I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to punt and cross my fingers and hope.
Yeah.
The next thing that happens in this episode is one of the last things I expected to see happen. And Garibaldi stops by Jakar's place, and he's grown to care a little more than you think. He's trying to stop Jakar from leaving.
Well, Garibaldi is not upset, or excuse me, is upset with Londo. He knows what's been going on.
Right.
And he hates to see Jakar just lay down and say whatever. But Jakar feels trapped.
Yeah, I think I think you've nailed it there. And it's not cornered and fight trapped. It's the led to the slaughter trap either way he goes.
Yeah. There's no way he can turn that's going to save himself and the resistance movement. And so, he's just given up.
But, the thing is, he can't save the resistance movement. He can't save the rebellion against the Centauri. Ultimately, they've got to save themselves.
Well, yeah. But Jakar is a figurehead.
Right.
And now, if Jakar did go back to Narn, would he be a martyr that would spur them on and maybe cause them to escalate? Or would he be seen as, well, here it is. He's the strongest of us, and he's gone.
I think a lot of it would be dependent on how Jakar behaved, how he handled and how he comported himself. Whether or not, and this goes back to what Londo originally said, whether or not they were able to break him.
Mm-hmm. And they would not break Jakar.
No, if they were able to kill him, if they were forced to kill him without breaking him, then yes, he becomes a martyr that fuels the rebellion.
No, Jakar will not break, because we see that next season very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think in a way that becomes a turning point for Londo.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, what Jakar would face on Narn is probably mild compared to what he will face
Under Cartesian?
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin, yet another meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
In his defense, I will say that he's justified at least.
Well, he may be justified, but he was way out of line the way he talked to that colleague of his.
That's probably true.
That was way over the top. I wish I had taken that clip, but
you have to admit you've had people you've had, and you obviously you're dealing with a bureaucratic administrator here.
Right.
He said things in a way that every one of us really wishes we had the cojones to put it at some time or another.
Well, I'll tell you what. Someone talked to me that one time like that on a job. 5 minutes later, I was no longer on the job.
Yeah. Yep. I like I said, I definitely get it where you're coming from. I get both, actually.
And I'll put it this way: I wasn't fired.
Yeah. Well, I think the stress is getting to him because this time he ends up hitting the stems.
Uh-huh. He grabs it and there he goes. He's got to, off he goes.
Yeah, that's kind of setting up his fall. We're kind of getting down to the wire here. Nafar, he's busy addressing the Narn, dumping obviously pointless platitudes at them. Just a side thought. The clock is ticking down on the probe, right?
Right.
One of the holes that I've had in this is, why hasn't anyone else outside of the command crew and the people on Earth, it's 24 hours. There's been no attempt of evacuation, no warning to the ambassadors, hey, you better get out of here. At least ask Kosh, hey, whose ship is this?
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Like like you said, the probe story is one that's best not dug into too far.
No.
But like I said, the end of the world is near, and as far as addressing the Narn promising empty gas, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And of the people that challenge him, Delenn.
Yeah.
Not what you want out of your bodyguard, is it?
No. He's finally had enough, and he's going to step forward and talk.
Uh-huh. Well, there's 3 minutes left on the probe. Sheridan is getting a bit suspicious here. He seems to agree with you that this whole pass or die thing doesn't really make any sense.
No.
And his comment is that he thinks it's a berserker. By the way, and this is why I think this is one of the justifications behind the storyline. Why does he think it's what does he mean when he thinks it's a berserker?
Now that I didn't know. I was going to ask you, what is a berserker? Now the only reference I'm aware of berserkers was a faction on that sci-fi show that just wrapped up. I can't remember. Noah Wiley was in it, but at any rate, no, not Defiance. It was I don't remember what it was. He played the guy played this Mason, and then there was a group of wild guys. They were called berserkers. And,
the Old Norsemen.
Yeah.
The Vikings.
Okay.
In this case, though, berserker is a reference to some very well-regarded, and I am embarrassed to say I've actually got the ebook, I just haven't read it, classic science fiction by author Fred Saberhagen. His Berserker series. In fact, that's what he's... And I'm embarrassed to say I haven't read it because that's really what he is most famous for. I've got Saberhagen's... I got a variety of Saberhagen works here. His Book of Swords, his Empire of the East. Excellent books, by the way. You think you're reading a fantasy story until you find out that you're reading far future.
Oh.
And I'm not going to say anything about it because, especially for some of our younger listeners who aren't steeped in some of the old classic sci-fi, they may not have read it. But Empire of the East, excellent read. The Book of Swords, there's actually a few books. The first Book of Swords is actually, in my opinion, the best of them. But worthwhile reads. Anyway, the point of a berserker, for what they are an intelligent AI. They're intelligent AI ships who exist as the purpose for their existence is basically to wipe out any organic sentience that they find.
Oh.
They were actually developed and programmed by a race that's only known as the Builders to destroy another race that they were at war with, who's now extinct. And, of course, the Berserkers turned on them as well and wiped out the Builders and proceeded to march across known space, wiping out any sentience that they can find.
Okay, so if you play stupid, you're safe.
Basically, like I said, I haven't read the book. I'm going to have to read it. The main reason I haven't read it is I tend to go more for novels, and a lot of, especially the early Berserker, is in the format of short story.
Okay.
You know what else did I think Saberhagen wrote some shorts for Robert Asprin's Thieves' World anthologies as well.
However,
I think he did.
This is not the Saberhagen podcast.
But this particular probe storyline really just kind of screams Fred Saberhagen. Sort of a tip of the hat there. So that's the only reason why I'm willing to kind of excuse it.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, Sheridan calls off the transmission of the answers at the last moment. And, yep, he's right. No boom today.
Yeah, we didn't get the boom, at least not nearby.
Yeah, he calls out a maintenance spot. The probe travels on. Once it gets out of range, he sends a maintenance bot up close and has that transmit the answer, partly to test his theory, and partly he didn't want it just to go off and find some other race and blow them up.
Mm-hmm.
Question. So the probe does explode, but when you're trying to make it go boom, does that really count as boom? Especially when it's far away?
Not in this case.
Not in this case.
Just a bad story. It's just a bad plot line.
So the plot line is the boom.
Yeah, it boomed all right.
All right. Well, G'Kar is on his way out. He's leaving, except the Narn won't let him.
Yeah, one of them stops him on the stairs as he's coming down and says, "You can't do this." And he says, "Thank you, I appreciate it." And then he gets a little farther along, and here comes two. And
he is
you can't do
valued
this.
and he is needed here.
He says the same thing, and then he gets down to the bottom of the stairs, and there's a whole mess of Narn waiting for him down there.
With Talon at the lead, and Talon draws his katak, which looks suspiciously like a katana. And his lines, this is one of the reasons why Marshall Teague's character, why the Talon character is so well loved in the fandom. You have the whole quote. I mean, G'Kar asks, "Is anything more important than their safety?" And for me, at least, and remember, I've studied a lot of. I mean, on the side, I've studied a lot of history and world events. His answer, the answer in that discussion is just, awesome.
Yep.
Do you have that to play?
It's on its way.
We cannot let you go, G'Kar. The only way out is through all of us.
If I stay here, your families are in jeopardy. Is anything more important than their safety?
Yes, their freedom. It's better to die in the cause of freedom than to live in comfort as a slave. We understand this, and our families understand this, because you taught it to us. Stay, G'Kar, for us and for them.
To leave now that I have decided to stay and join the others would be rude. And extremely uncomfortable.
That is a katak. Once drawn, it cannot be sheathed until it draws blood. Again, you would raise arms against your own kind. Have I taught you nothing?
I carry my sword in my hand. You carry yours in your heart and in your mind. As I see it, that gives you a 2-to-1 advantage in arms. Be fair, Citizen G'Kar.
I will stay.
That, for some reason, that sends chills down my spine every time I hear it. Just the power of that.
Well, yeah, and the way that Marshall delivers, or the lines that were written for him to deliver, were very poetic.
Right. The writing here is brilliant.
Yes.
And of course, when he bloods his sword, I cringe.
Oh yeah, and you know, if you watch the expressions on his face, he really sells it.
Yeah. I know. And that's part of behind the cringe.
Yeah.
For our younger listeners, if you haven't sliced up your hands yet, give yourself time. You'll get sympathy pain. Garibaldi and Franklin, as we're continuing to wrap everything up, the stems are going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, he's lying about it.
He's lying about it. With the mess of the crisis, he really did have a legitimate justification to have to stay on his feet. This would have been the one emergency where he probably could have told the truth and owned up to it, at least if he wasn't having an addiction problem.
Mm-hmm.
But he lies.
And Michael knows he's lying.
Yeah. Yep. So, well, hopefully he's going to keep an eye on his friend. And
Of
right
course.
now he's doing it as a friend, not as head of security.
Hmm.
We do get a second chuckle. The Pilots Guild, Sheridan. That was funny. But we close on a sad note. Veer is leaving.
Yep, we say goodbye to Veer.
And it really is a sad moment. Now, there is a reason for this, actually. Veer's departure, the real world cause on this is he had a part in a sitcom on Fox, and I don't even remember what the heck it was. I'd have to go and look it up on IMDb.
Huh.
Obviously, it didn't last very long because he will come back full time. He's going to be. The expectation is that he would be in and out on the show. He'd be making regular guest appearances, but he's back in full force eventually.
Yeah, to lose him would have been very, very sad.
Right. But of course, we didn't know this at the time, though Straczynski said, "Don't worry, we will be seeing more of Veer."
Mm.
But it was still a favorite character going away, as you said, sad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we close out A Day in the Strife.
Well, there's not much more you can say about it. I think
it's just one of those windows on the world episodes for Babylon 5. But that said, except for the probe, which was really a very small piece of the story, everything here does have impact or effect or a direct connection with the big arc, with the main story. So it is an arc episode in that respect, even though it's not one of the big whammy episodes.
No, it's definitely setting up future things.
Yeah. Veer's departure, Veer specifically becoming the ambassador to Minbar, Franklin's drug stem problem, the gun running has its role in it. The whole Narn arc. This is not just Marshall Teague being introduced back in the show, but the whole Narn sequence. All of this, advances the big arc along in its story.
It does. And Veer is going to be doing some things that could potentially get him in a lot of trouble too.
Potentially? Oh, definitely more than potentially.
Yeah.
But he does the wrong things for the right reasons.
Yeah, well, that's Veer.
Exactly where I was going. Yeah, that's Veer.
So next time, we're going to be looking at an episode that's probably going to bring up some philosophical discussions, Passing Through Gethsemane.
Passing Through Gethsemane.
With Brad Dourif as the main guest star. And
Yep.
Whenever you see him, there's going to be some kind of very mental disturbing.
Yeah. Hey, he's got eyebrows this time, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is probably one of the most powerful episodes of the entire series.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how our philosophical points of view come together on that.
I don't think there will be. I don't. It'll be an interesting discussion, and I say that in the absolute honest context. It will be an interesting discussion.
Yes,
because this is an episode that is very theological and very philosophical.
Yep. No, we don't want to get too deep into it, though.
No,
because
we're
that's
not.
for
No,
next
we're not
time.
going to. But I think to get as deep of an episode, where else would we have to? Where else would we have to go in the show? sleeping in the light, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we had a pretty good philosophical discussion over that episode that
Believers
that you don't like.
Yeah, I think another episode that will probably get as deep is the episode the Core's Mother, the Core's Father.
Ah. Well, I'll tell you what, we should probably wrap this one up. We're already over an hour.
Oh my. How did the time go? Oh, and of course the Fall of Centauri Prime.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Another really powerful episode. So this is going to be one of those will probably both end up being very deep discussions as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually looking forward to discussing Believers. And don't worry, listeners. It's going to get into. It's unavoidable. Straczynski presents it that way, but it's going to be a fun discussion, and I am honestly looking forward to it. All right, my friend. Any other thoughts? Any other comments?
No, not really. Just a question.
Yes.
Did we have any boom today?
Well, you already set the rules out, so no boom today.
Nope, no boom today.
No boom today. But there will be boom tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay, good. Then we do have something to look forward to.
Oh, yeah. There's always a boom tomorrow. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.